Thank you very much for joining us in our series in the book of Ephesians. Today we're looking at Ephesians 2:11 and 12, focusing on the word remember. Paul starts these beautiful verses with a statement, wherefore remember. Think about this. Where would we be today if the Lord hadn't saved us? Or what would we be doing? Sometimes remembering this helps us to stay humble. It helps us not to be proud. Helps us not to look down on people or be self-righteous. Memory is something that we usually neglect. But as children of God, we have to remember that God wants us to remember certain things. In the book of 2 Peter, Peter reminds us in 4 different verses how memory helps to stir us up as Christians. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 15, one of the main purposes of the Sabbath for the Jewish people was to cause them to remember. In Isaiah 51 verse 1, it says that, remember the rock from which you were cut and the quarry from which you were dug. Every time we forget God's faithfulness, it affects us from moving forward. And Paul describes this in the other verses to show us how hopeless we were if God hadn't opened the door of salvation to us. The reason that we remember is to help us to see that God's salvation was completely a work of His grace and His mercy. David says with us in the book of Psalm 124 verse 1, he says that if the Lord had not been on our side. This is our challenge this week, to keep this in mind. If the Lord hadn't been on our side, where will we be? Once we were strangers, we were cut off from God, separated from Christ, excluded from God's people, with no covenant. But God remembered us. He didn't look at our race. He didn't look at our gender. He didn't look at our education background. He didn't look at our country, but He just decided to choose us. So it's our challenge this week that we remember where the Lord took us from and where God has brought us today. As we heard on Sunday, God has given us unrestricted access, and today we can be part of His family, remembering the things that we did in the past, but Him still showing mercy on us and calling us His children. I pray that you're encouraged by today's word, and I hope that you remember all the good things the Lord is doing for us, and let's always be thankful that God calls us His children today. God bless you.